Addictions touch even the best Christian families right here in San Diego. This is Recovery Radio San Diego with Todd Cunningham of Pacific Hills Treatment Center and Recovery Options Network, along with John and Leslie Savage on KPRZ weekdays at 6:30. Stay with us for real-life stories, help from Christian experts, what works and what doesn't work, and local area resources for you and your family. Welcome to Recovery Radio San Diego.
You're listening to 1210 AM KPRZ. Good evening. My name is John Savage, and this is a brand new radio program about addictions and self-destructive behaviors, along with the gift of recovery. I am a grateful, recovering addict, and I am one of 3 members of this new local radio ministry. Recovery Radio is a daily program heard Monday through Friday at this time, and its sole mission is to assist addicts and their families by providing local professional resources to get them the help they need so that they can live a healthy and productive life. I firmly believe that man's chief end is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. And so that's the purpose of, at least in my mind, of the radio show. In studio with me is my wife, Leslie. Good evening, Leslie.
Hi, John.
Hello, Leslie. Nice to have you here. And Todd Cunningham, who is with Recovery Options. Todd, how are you?
Doing great. Thank you.
Let's give out the phone number and your association with Recovery Options.
Well, I'm a director at Recovery Options. We have a call center of crisis counselors that are available to take your call. The phone number is 949-973-9140. And what you'll receive when you call, you'll have somebody who's very sympathetic and understanding, has years of this experience behind them. They're going to talk to you and find out what's going on with your situation. They're going to do an assessment, and they're going to help you get help. There's no charge for this call. It's our mission. It's what we believe we're supposed to be doing. And when you call them, you're going to have a coach that is going to help you all the way through getting help, no matter how long it takes or what it takes. We have resources across the United States. We got people like Richard Perlin that we will work with in providing you help. Mm-hmm. So please call.
People are calling. And we encourage you to call. There are people struggling here in San Diego with addiction issues or family members.
Yeah, and I want to mention it's totally confidential.
Yeah.
When you call, nobody's going to know who you are. You know, it never goes anywhere. Totally confidential. So call us up.
We've had a lot of thought and prayer when we put this show together, and really what we wanted to do is be an outreach for those struggling in the San Diego community with addictions. And you can call Todd at any time, area code 949-973-9140. 949-973-9140. We've begun to get email, which is great. You can send us a note at any time. It's recoveryradiosd@gmail.com. recoveryradiosd@gmail.com. My recovery journey began for me May 1st, 2007. It's a little over 3 years ago when I finally surrendered and met God while I was in jail in Tijuana. For 2 years leading up to that day, I had been abusing medication for lower back pain. So for me, taking that first step in recovery is admitting, which I did, that I was powerless over our addiction and that our lives had become unmanageable. And all of us here at Recovery Radio pray for that for you. We really want you to get that help if you're ready to take that first step. But sometimes when we take that first step, we need professional help. And all this week, we've been very pleased to have Richard Perlin from First House Detox. He's been with us talking about the detox process.
Well, Richard, thank you for coming in and spending the whole week with us. What I'd like to do in this show is just kind of maybe move away from the detox and talk about the full services that you provide. I'd like to kind of focus on your family coaching, and so I don't have a clear understanding of what that is. You also deal with interventions, so I'd kind of like to keep the two separate because I want you to focus on interventions a little bit further down the road. But could you kind of tell the audience what it is you do when it comes to family coaching?
Yes, of course, and thanks, Todd. And first, I just want to say thanks for having me here this week. It's been a great week. I think we've had a lot of sometimes spirited discussions. always in the spirit and of recovery, and it's just been a great experience. So thanks again. Typically, by the time I receive a phone call for somebody to enter detox, or in interacting with an admissions counselor over at Pacific Hills, the family is just at an absolute dead end. They've recognized for a long period of time that their loved one needs help. That's not even the question. And to a great extent, what they hear from their family members oftentimes is, look, I know I want to, I know I have a problem, I'm going to do something different. And of course, the associated broken promises that lead up to that day for them finally in exasperation to reach out and say, look, we need professional help. We've got to find somebody that can kind of lead us out of this cycle of futility. And so there is a process, a defined process of recovery, not only for the addict but for the family. And it starts in the same manner that an addict gets help. A family has to reach that point where they say, look, we've really got to do things differently here. We cannot keep approaching the problem in the same way and expect a different result. And so when a family gets to that point and they pick up the phone and they call someone like myself, what they're going to hear is the initial stages of a game plan that over a period of time, my hope is that I can foster trust in individuals, individual family members, to a point where they're going to do what we're asking the addict to do, which is to take direction. I always say dealing with addiction is much more practical than clinical. It's much more practical than emotional. And to have an emotional approach, to wag your finger, for example, and yell at an addict is something that a level that an addict can easily deal on. Anger, frustration. These are things that an addict already has present in his or her life. And so we've got to come at that a completely different way. We've got to come together as a family and say, look, we've been talking, in my case, to Richard over at First House, and we want you to speak with him because he understands addiction and we do not. Well, when that initial conversation takes place with an addict or an alcoholic, believe me, the hair on the back of their neck will stand up because they know how to work mom or dad. They know how to make their brother buy into their line of that they're pitching. But it's much more difficult for the addict or alcoholic to kind of really put one over on somebody that's lived in their shoes for a great period of time. Most of the people that work in recovery, certainly all the people at First House and Pacific Hills and the different treatment centers out there, have personal experience in recovery. They are recovering addicts or alcoholics, and there's an old saying, you can't BS a BSer, and so that certainly plays into it. It's very difficult in the same breath for families to step aside. We, as family members, we perceive ourselves to be the greatest advocate for our loved ones, and it's very difficult to turn that position over to somebody that's just met your son or your daughter or your uncle or whoever is being affected by this. But I can tell you, based on my experience, that until a family is able to do that in a meaningful sense, that being, again, turn over recovery to people that really understand how to deal with it, until that takes place, there's very little hope for any change because, it's already been established. The pecking order in every family is already established. We have the mom that protects the son, or the dad that protects the son, and the mom that says to the dad, hey, look, get off his back. He's doing the best he can. And pretty soon, the chaos of the disease of alcoholism or addiction takes over, and people are pointing fingers at each other, and we're talking about everything except addressing the real problem, which is addiction. And so to pull all that emotion out of the equation and to bring a sense of peace and calm and say, look, we love you, this is what we're willing to do, and this is what we can no longer do, that brings immediate and practical results.
The voice you're hearing is Richard Perlin. Richard is with First House Detox. He also does interventions as well as coaching, as he was talking about there. You're listening to Recovery Radio, a brand new radio program about recovery, and this is 1210 a.m. KPRZ.
Richard, you're talking about your family coaching, and I hear you talking about what you do to coach them, to get them started in bringing their loved one into treatment. What do you do once you've gone through getting them started, they've enabled, and the person has finally gone into treatment? What do you do from there?
Well, truly, recovery is a lifetime commitment, and they might tell us initially that it's one day at a time, but it's those of us in the know that have had some extended sobriety realize it's one day at a time for the rest of my life. And so this is the challenge. Now, it does get easier for families after a period of time, and just as it gets easier for the addict. But suffice it to say that a level when they say a leper can't change his spots, this is what they mean. And so it's in my acceptance of my addiction that is my greatest strength in terms of my recovery. In other words, if I get up each day and ask for God for his help and direction to stay clean and sober, and then follow it up with a series of actions that would include typically a 12-step program in my particular case, and a spiritual connection. These are the elements that have to be present from that day forth. A family, once this the battle lines have been drawn, and we say, hey, look, the only thing that we're going to accept in a family member is his or her health or well-being. We as a family have to stand by that. And so there's all sorts of organizations that help in that. Al-Anon is a great support system for families that are affected by alcoholism or addiction. A lot of people derive immense benefit from church groups that are out there that can lend support and encouragement to families that are affected by this. But all of it revolves around a family reaching out and asking for help.
Well, that brings up the problem with the family or asking for help. I think a lot of secrets is probably one of the biggest characteristics of the family. And with that comes shame and embarrassment. And how do you break into that? Because you almost have to do that before you can even get them to come forward.
Well, and that's great, Leslie. It's a very difficult equation because, of course, because of the shame, the guilt, the remorse, and the stigma of addiction, what happens behind closed doors stays behind closed doors until really the emergency nature of the situation is revealed. That might be through a health consequence. It might be involve legal troubles. It might involve the loss of a job, certainly the breakup of important relationships, or some combination of those events. And of course, we try and reach out to families before it gets to that point. That is really the impetus behind this radio show, is to get families to recognize the inevitable consequences of addiction in their family and reach out before it's too late, before they have to undergo these horrific consequences. A lot of families are reluctant. Just using one example, a husband that drinks too much, he might say, gosh, if I go to treatment, I'll lose my job, then we'll lose the house, and he'll create a whole scenario around that. But I always tell a wife that's in that situation, the reason that we're speaking today is because you really understand that unless you intervene in some meaningful sense in this chain of events that's developing right under your roof, you're going to lose everything anyway. Mm-hmm. And of course, because alcoholics have a flair for the dramatic, they'll never include in that scenario the fact that California law precludes a human being from losing their job because they seek help. They'll never mention to the fact that society is all in all very understanding of people with their limitations. The one thing that society frowns on is people that understand that they have a problem and that are reluctant to do something about it. And so we really encourage people to kind of step past that stigma that exists primarily in their own mind reach out and ask for the help that they need. And of course, that's once again why we're here today, to provide those resources.
You're listening to Recovery Radio on 1210 AM KPRZ. The voice you're hearing is Richard Perlin from First House Detox. If you've got questions and you want to talk confidentially with Todd after this program, you can call him at area code 949-973-9140. That's area code 949-973-9140. You're taking calls, you're answering people's questions, you're talking to families. Is that right? I mean, we've gotten some really good calls.
Yeah, I'm averaging calls every night.
That's good.
And, we spend a half hour, 45 minutes with the callers.
Mm-hmm.
By the time we get off the phone, we've made friends. We've made a plan.
Mm-hmm.
They call me back the next day, whether they've made the first step in the plan or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'll help mentor them through their process, whether it takes 2 days or 4 years.
Oh, that's great, Todd. What I do want to bring up is that we were talking earlier in the week about opiates and OxyContin, and I just want to make sure that I get this out because I think it's going to be a very good series on KUSI coming up this Tuesday evening from 8 until 10 o'clock. They're talking about OxyContin in the local San Diego area high schools. So it's a 2-hour special. It has to do with addiction and recovery. I wanted to mention it. I'm sure it'll be a good produced program. So where do we go from here, Todd?
Well, Richard also is a professional interventionist. And an intervention is key to the success of a recovery program. It kind of is the catalyst, and it lays the groundwork for an addict to first accept that he's going to go to treatment. And number two, to really, while he's in treatment, soak it up if the intervention is done right, instead of being there under duress and saying, I'm here just to get through here. An intervention can be very sensitive. There's different ways to do interventions. There's families that try to do them on their own, and then you hire somebody like Richard, who comes alongside and takes the emotion out of it and does all the choreography around setting up the stage to ensure that it's done absolutely as effective as possible. Can you explain to me, your philosophy on an intervention, your process on intervention, and if somebody were to call you from this radio show, what they would expect from beginning to end?
Right. Well, I appreciate it because this is really where my passion exists in recovery. I think, I've been afforded the opportunity as an interventionist to do really lay the groundwork for successful recovery. It's just my personal belief, but it's shared by many others, that until the family gets healthy, the addict or alcoholic never will. That there is always a support system that accompanies alcohol or drug addiction. And, of course, an intervention in its classic sense intercedes on the ability of an addict or alcoholic to access that support system. Typically, I describe it as this. I when meeting with a family, I will say, in its essence, my mission is for you to trust me enough to say to your loved one, look, that's a great idea. Ask Richard, and Richard will let you know if we can do this. And when I get that kind of trust in a family, which has to be earned. Once again, we're talking in many cases about a family's most precious asset, their children. But once I earn that trust and they really see the value of taking a practical approach to recovery, well, it's pretty much game over for the addict or alcoholic, because they are not going to be able to circumvent the process any longer. They're not going to be able to tell mom that dad's mean and I really do need $30 for gas. Well, and why don't you believe me? So I am a kind of a control freak in that regard from that point forward, out of necessity. I think that a family desperately needs a spokesperson in terms of dealing with addiction. I think that I work in conjunction with the treatment center to develop a aftercare plan that as I said, what I do, if I'm doing my job right, and I take a great deal of pride in doing my job right, what I do is I establish myself as the go-to person, not only for the addict, but for the family who's plagued by questions, Are we doing the right thing? Or my son says that he's going to hurt himself, or my son says he'll never talk to me again because of what I've done. And of course, in that coaching process, if you will, I tell families, look, this is all part of the equation. Hang on tight. A lot of times we have to cross our fingers and toes. There's certainly a great deal of prayer involved, but ultimately, it is the most powerful force on earth, and that is a true expression of love. And there's no more pure expression than one family member for the next. And so that's kind of the outline.
Richard, yesterday you used the phrase, "It's not what the addict or alcoholic does, it's what we do." Who is the we?
The we is the family. And I think that everybody listening to this show that's been affected by alcoholism or addiction in their family can clearly see the part that they've played in it. That doesn't mean it's their fault. I don't mean to indict anybody for their family member's problem. But if we're really honest about the situation there, we can clearly point to different. It might be something where we provided an automobile for somebody to drive drunk in that should have been taken off the road long ago. It might have been covering for a work situation that somebody ended up stealing from and damaging their career. There's just all of these contributing factors that allow an addict or an alcoholic to sustain their addiction. And we have to, as the clear-headed members of the family structure, we have to kind of shake our heads here and say, look, what are we contributing to the problem? And what can we contribute to the solution? And if we're willing to look at the addiction from that vantage point, we're going to see that there's a lot that can be done. So this is something that is just, as I said before, is just the most powerful component of recovery, which is a family saying, look, we love you, but we can't do this anymore. We won't.
I agree. You're listening to 1210 AM KPRZ. This is Recovery Radio for San Diego.
You know, I can't emphasize enough on how important it is for the family to take the leading role in getting help. You know, we take hundreds of calls every day, and the families call in, and I teach the people that answer the phone. Everybody who calls us is calling in because there's a substance abuse or addiction problem going on in the family. And the first question that we get is how much do you cost? Where are you located? Well, you know, those aren't the questions to be asking. The questions are, is how can you help me? What can we do? How, you know, what's the process to get through this? It's very rare that the addict goes and gets the help all by himself. And so it's our responsibility to get this help. If you have somebody in your family or you have a friend that has a drug or alcohol problem and you just sit there and watch it happen, you're part of the problem. You have to step up. You have to make that phone call. Then get a hold of Recovery Options or myself and let us help you help them. So give us a call, 949-973-9140. Quite often, you know, I tell a story. I lost my mother about 3 years ago to cancer. And she had, you know, lung cancer from smoking. And cancer came on very quick. Within 8 months, she had passed away. Well, if somebody would have told me, hey, there's a clinic over in Boston, and this doctor, you know, if you send her there for 30, 60, 90 days, the chances of her coming home, and if she does what she is told to do and goes through the therapy, quits smoking, checks in with the doctor once or twice a week, and goes to a support group, she'll probably live the rest of her life. I would have figured out how to get her help. One way, I would have washed cars to come up with that money. You see women with breast cancer and their friends pool together, go out and do rallies to bring funds together to save their friend's life. Drug addiction is no different. In fact, it's worse. It's more devastating on family members, etc. Let us help you. Give us a call. That's what this radio show is about. It's geared around the family members, and I can't express the responsibility that we all have to the people that are around us, that basically I consider the devil has got a hold of them, and we need to stick our hands out and pull them out. Otherwise, we just lose them.
Well, we have an opportunity for someone that is looking for help, they can call Todd immediately. But I want you to touch on the scholarship programs that we have available. We're going to hammer that every day.
That's right.
We need to.
Right. Pacific Hills Treatment Center is a Christian drug and alcohol treatment center here in the Southern California area. They also have a treatment center there in Texas. They are probably one of the most well-known Christian treatment centers in the United States. They're known all over. Betty Ford used to send to us, still does. So we're taking calls all day long. They have come to the table with a scholarship program that is matching of funds that are for churches and small businesses. So if you're a church and you have somebody in your congregation that has an addiction problem, give us a call. Let's see how we can financially help getting them into treatment. Richard Perlin with First House has also offered to provide some scholarship opportunities. And I'm sure that if you call in, Richard specializes in intervention, family coaching, and detox. He'll be happy to help you in any way possible. So call into the radio show. Call me, 949-973-9140, and let us help you get started in saving your loved one's life.
Richard, thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a great week, and we really appreciate you coming down and sharing your story with us and what you're doing at First House Detox. This is the radio program that talks about addictions and recoveries and God's gift of recovery. This is 1210 a.m. KPRZ, Recovery Radio for San Diego. If you'd like to send us a note, you can certainly do so at recoveryradiosd@gmail.com, or call Todd immediately after the show if you've got questions about your own addictions or maybe a family member that's struggling. 949-973-9140. Richard, thanks for coming in. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll see you next time.
Addictions touch even the best Christian families right here in San Diego. This is Recovery Radio San Diego with Todd Cunningham of Pacific Hills Treatment Center and Recovery Options Network, along with John and Leslie Savage on KPRZ weekdays at 6:30. Stay with us for real-life stories, help from Christian experts, what works and what doesn't work, and local area resources for you and your family. Welcome to Recovery Radio San Diego.